As much as I don't want to admit fall's right around the corner, it is. It's pitch dark at 5 a.m. I'm eventually going to get on board with the fact that fall's here. But what else is happening? The fall real estate market prediction episode here, we're going to dive into all the things, like what I'm seeing in the Midwest, what I'm hearing from other agents around the country. And guess what? The sky is not falling. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. You gotta love when you start doing a recording for a podcast and I start like blah, blah, blah. And Christy's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm talking about blah, da, 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 da. And then I'm like, okay, let's start it again. And I go blah, blah, blah. And she's like, seriously, like, what are you talking about again? So I started talking about a podcast that literally we recorded like 6 weeks ago. I mean, into the same episode all over again. And I'm like, no wonder this all feels so familiar from my notes. So then Christy's like, wait a second. We're supposed to be talking about X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't have any notes for that. And she goes, well, I thought we were just going to talk about it. I'm like, so yeah, today in the podcast, we are talking all about fall real estate market predictions. We are not talking about how to get back into the momentum of fall because we already recorded that one. And chances are by the time you're listening to this episode, you already listened to that one a few weeks back. So, hey, Christy. Hi.
Hey, Beth. Hey, Beth. This is like take 3. This is hilarious.
It's hilarious.
I'm excited. I'm not usually on these episodes, these real estate market prediction episodes. I'm kind of pumped to be here because I get it firsthand of what you're thinking. Going to be great.
I mean, we're not quite sure about what Beth is thinking at the moment, so Beth better get her head on straight so this episode doesn't totally derail. Good God. I'm like, what? Looking at you like, what is wrong with you? Drink more coffee. Yeah. Like, come on, get on board.
I'm over
and
here like,
you're
what?
Thinking the same thing about me. Oh my God.
I like your earrings.
Thanks. They're ones that you always borrow for photo shoots. They're pretty cute, right?
I like them. Yep. They'd look cute with my outfit.
I mean, obviously you're not seeing what I'm wearing, but they're very pretty. They have like mustard yellow tassels and some really beautiful like aqua beads on them. And there's some earrings that I found on a steal of a deal and they've gotten so much mileage. Like everybody has worn them for photo shoots and they're so freaking cute.
You can probably go peep my profile picture on the website and you'll probably see me wearing them.
Yeah, they're so damn cute. So we're probably not to jingle too much. So Ryan wants to kill me when he's editing. So, okay. So we are going to talk about fall 2024 real estate market predictions. That's the topic. Now that I am clear as to what we're talking about, we can actually get into it.
In fairness, we typically batch record a little bit ahead of time and we're pushing this a little bit closer because there's a lot going on out there right now that is affecting the fall real estate market. So there you go, Beth. It makes sense that we recorded that other episode a little bit ago. So, you know.
And I'm glad we didn't record this one earlier because a lot of the information probably would not have been as applicable.
So much has changed.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Like, what are we seeing? Like, what I'm seeing, it's interesting. A bunch of like friends / podcast people, like Amy Cotney, for instance. We had her on the podcast, I don't know, maybe like a year and a half ago or so. It was interesting. Right. She put something on social media just recently talking about how it's become a buyer's market in Alabama. And I'm like, wow, that's really interesting because we are not experiencing really a buyer's market per se here in Minnesota. We still have, you know, anytime I go on a listing appointment, like one of the big pieces of analytics that I love to look at is months worth of inventory that we have currently for sale, meaning that, like, let's say in Chanhassen, where I live, I would look at if everyone in Chanhassen stopped putting homes on the market, or a specific type of home, like how quickly would we be out of inventory? And anytime that number is less than 5 or 6 months, we are still in a strong seller's market. So I would say in the majority of the Twin Cities, we have under 2 months worth of inventory. It's like a month and a half or a month in the majority of the places where I've been doing listing presentations recently, which is still an extremely strong seller's market. But the crazy thing is there are homes that are sitting on the market. So still are sitting on the market longer and are doing price reductions. So we're still seeing those homes that are like flying off the market, which there's those neighborhoods that always will, or like a really sexy school district. But
mid-century modern.
Mid-century moderns. Oh my God. If I could list only mid-century moderns in Minnesota, I mean, I wouldn't have as many listings because we don't have as many of those as other parts of the country. But those are the unicorn properties here in Minnesota that anytime I get a mid-century listing, I'm like, oh my God. Because the mid-century buyers like come out of the woodwork. They show up in spades. It's awesome.
Yeah. They sell first weekend for sure.
Yeah, always multiple offers, always top dollar. Yeah. So anyone listening that's got a mid-century mod that they want me to market to the nines, like, I'm your girl. Bring it on. Did you
just snap? I like that you just brought snapping. I just
snapped and did like boom. Yep. Wish everybody could see how cool I am right now.
I get to. So I mean, that's the most important thing, right?
Oh, there you go. But then there's those properties that are sitting on the market, and it's generally price driven. You know, it might be poor marketing, but 9 times out of 10, it's price driven. And then all of a sudden you see like when the price gets to like that perfect little sweet spot, then all of a sudden the home flies off the market. And sometimes in multiple offers where people will be like, well, I mean, that's kind of impossible. This house has been sitting on the market 30 days and now you're telling me it goes into multiple offers. I'm like, yeah, because now it got to the price that more buyers that have been sitting on the sidelines watching the home, hoping for a price reduction. Now they're like, oh, the price reduction's there. That's the price we're willing to pay.
So I have a question for you, Beth. Do you think some of that, the pricing is harder now or just different because we had that huge peak happen like COVID and then right after, right?
Yeah.
We had like where the home prices soared, and then to get more of like that realistic idea of what, and home prices are continuing to rise, but like where that leveling out is part of that, because as a homeowner, I want my home to sell for this kind of astronomical number, or is it just because the market's moving all the time, it's just hard to price it?
It's a little of both. You know, like some neighborhoods are really easy to price. If it's more of like a cookie cutter neighborhood and everything is sort of apples to apples, you're like, okay, well, it's going to sell in this range. You know, the likelihood of your home selling, you know, let's say it's like 500. The likelihood if every home in your neighborhood sold for 480 to 520, the likelihood of your house selling for 550, unless you've done some incredible things to it, is very slim right now. So you're going to get a really solid fair market value. But sometimes we're seeing those homes that are more of like a one of a kind, maybe like it's a great home, but it's not in as sexy of a school district or like that sort of thing. And it's just like the pricing just isn't quite there. And I think some of the stuff that factors into that is here in the Midwest. If you're not from the Midwest, you might not even get what this statement means, but everyone here in the Midwest is like, or in Minnesota for sure, is Minnesota nice? Meaning they're looking at the home and they're like, well, we really love it, but we don't want to make an insulting offer to the seller. And whereas I think in other parts of the country, buyers are a little bit more brazen and just a little bit more like straightforward. And they're like, we love this house, but we don't love the price. And so we're going to make an offer. Minnesotans just sort of sit on the sidelines and tiptoe around it. And they're like, well, we like it. But I'm like, spit it out. Like, what would you pay for this house? If you're telling me you love it, but then you're not sending an offer. Well, what is that price that would compel you to make an offer? And it's sometimes a little bit harder to get at that in the Midwest than other parts of the country.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
East Coast people are like, what do you even mean? You just say, this is what I want to pay. Yeah. And then you make the offer, right?
Yeah. We love your house. We don't think it's worth it. You have it listed at $500 and we'll pay $475. Great. Send me an offer. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like one of my investors that I work with pretty regularly, I love her. She's from Minnesota, but she's pretty straight shooter. And we've had a couple of listings where it's like people are like, oh my God, I love it. And then we're getting to Sunday, we list the house on a Thursday and we're getting closer to Sunday. And she's like, we don't have any offers yet. And she's like, what the hell? All this feedback are saying people love it. And I'm like, she goes, I wish someone would just bring me an offer. She's like, because they don't know what my bottom line is in my head. And I'm like,
yeah,
I can't say that to the other buyer's agent because then that's basically like tipping my hat that we would take less money. But if somebody would just say, just send us an offer, there's a good chance that the seller would be thrilled because she already has a number in her head that she's hoping to get. Buyers could actually probably get the house at a better deal. So there's those houses out there all the time. And that weird little Midwest song and dance thing that happens here more often than I would prefer is annoying. I think we could get to the conclusion a lot quicker if buyers were like, I love this house. Here's what I'm willing to pay. And just see. Then the buyers would have their answer right away. Like, no, seller won't take that. Like, but then the seller usually tips their hand and says, yeah, but I would take this. And then you can sit and think about it.
Yeah.
And everyone isn't just going, well, I wonder if I could get the house at that price. And the seller's like, I wish somebody would bring me an offer. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that is, but it totally makes sense. Yeah. Understanding how we are culturally here in Minnesota, it totally makes sense.
It's a little bit of like mind fuckery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's annoying, especially when you know that you got a great listing and you know that your price might be like just a little bit off. You're like, okay, you love the house, just make an offer. So we are seeing a little bit of that. The awesome thing in the last month or so is that interest rates are down over a full %.
We should be throwing confetti. This is right? Bananas.
I would say not as many agents are talking about this as they should be. And the recession, are we in recession? Are we going into recession? The jobs numbers aren't great. I mean, that's all the stuff that factors into the reasoning why this, the interest rates have dropped. But if you're a buyer sitting on the sidelines and you've been complaining that interest rates are not great, your sign could not be more neon lit up. Now's the time.
A whole point is wow, this is what you're dreaming of. If you really want to buy right now, you're set. Yeah. It's crazy.
Hundreds of dollars of savings in, that $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 price point, which now, kind of the average, that's an average house in a nice suburb here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
You're saving a few $100s a month. It's a lot of money. One of my girlfriends, I was at a conference last week, said, she goes, with the interest rates, she goes, that type of savings, she goes, it's almost like you bought a house, but now your utilities every month are free.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. She's like, your cable, heat, electric. She's like, now what you would have spent on all that, she goes, no, that's free. She's like, that's a lot of savings. I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to look at that. I like that.
I do too. Nice.
Yeah. So the Fed is talking, the Fed teased us at the beginning of 2024 and said they're going to do 5 or 6 rate cuts. So I think that's what a lot of us, real estate professionals were sort of hanging our hat on, is that the interest rates were going to start slowly trending down in 2024. Well, we have not seen that until the last month. Interest rates have stayed way higher for way longer than we anticipated. And it was interesting. I had read another article, and I don't even know who to credit for this, but they said the article was basically saying the Fed has done the housing market a disservice for keeping rates as high as they did for so long. So it's interesting that, the Fed has a method to their madness, but then it has created some stagnant markets across the country. I feel like ours has been pretty steady here in the Midwest, but some markets sellers are not super thrilled, and a lot of sellers are still sitting in homes that no longer serve them, but they're not willing to give up those 3% interest rates. So I think if interest rates continue to trend down and the Fed makes a cut in September, right now we're already kind of in the low 6s. If the Fed makes a cut in September, there's a good chance we can be in the high 5s for interest rates.
A dream.
I think that's a dream rate.
That is a dream. Yeah.
I think any rate in the 6s, in my opinion, is a really awesome rate. better
like
than
where
when I
I'm
bought my
sitting,
first
Beth,
house.
I view like 5s as good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's just like totally different perspectives on it, right? But again, experiencing as a homeowner, experiencing that really low interest rate,
Yeah.
what's going to get me out of that? 5 seem okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to trend a lot of sellers out of properties that they've been sitting in, just sort of holding off. And they're like, okay, I didn't want to like sell my house and have a rate in the 7 or 8s, but I'll consider it now in the high 5s, low 6s. So
Are
I
you
think
talking to me right now?
I mean, if the shoe fits, why are you putting a for sale
Yeah.
sign in your yard? So yeah, I think that's going to be really good. But the weird little, timing of everything is right now, the average property is not seeing mega multiple offers. But as interest rates start trending down, and if the rates get back into the 5s, it could be a bloodbath again. I'm not going to go on record saying that, but it could be those homes that all of a sudden are getting 15, 20 offers again on every single home just because.
Which is a nightmare. It's a nightmare
It's
for
not
everyone
great
involved.
for buyers.
Really. Yeah.
Sellers love it, but it's terrible for buyers. So that's what, I really have been trying to talk about this a lot on social and just say, if you've been wanting to buy a house, interest rates are really freaking good right now. You should consider doing it before things become a bloodbath. And then it doesn't matter that your interest rate is lower. If you're paying more for the house, you're at the same. It's a wash.
Yeah.
And especially for buyers, if you've been sitting on the fence, look at those homes that have been on the market for a couple of weeks. Those are the sellers that are anxious and want to sell. There's a really, really good chance that those sellers will take less money for their home. So then you can get a deal on the house, and I'm using air quotes. You get to have an inspection. You can maybe even buy the house contingent upon the sale of your current home selling. Maybe you can get the seller to pay for a 2-1 buy down and you can get interest rates even lower. There's a lot of things happening right now that buyers really could be capitalizing on that I feel like they're not, just because interest rates are still in the 6s.
You know what this makes me sort of think of? You know when you go on vacation and it's like peak season, low season, and then there's shoulder season?
Yeah.
I feel like we're in a shoulder season.
At 1,000%. I think so. That's what it feels like to me.
I need a vacation because that's what I'm thinking of. But that's another thing. But it's just that's like that sweet spot, right? Where if we go now, we're going to, the weather is going to be probably good, but we might get a little iffy. It's like the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. So it'll be interesting. The Fed's talking about then cutting the rate again towards the end of the year. And I don't know if that would be closer to the election or after the election in November. But there's a lot of uncertainty. The political landscape right now is probably the most uncertain that it's been in several election cycles from my vantage point. Are you thinking the same thing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And if you want to dive into more interest rates and the election, how it's affected, you just recorded an episode with Connor Hesh, who is such a great resource and expert on this. So go check that out and you can dive in a little bit deeper of how the political environment can affect interest rates and what you can expect from that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think just sometimes people just kind of sit in that holding pattern, just waiting to see what sort of outcome happens from the election. And it's so interesting. I'm not going to name any names here, but a real estate friend here in the Twin Cities, he's like, I'm not doing anything. And he's been in real estate for years. He's like, I'm not doing anything until I see what happens with this election and see if the world's going to implode. I'm like, oh my God, the world's not going to implode, but it's so funny.
We survived COVID. Come on, buddy.
I know. And it's so interesting how everybody has such a different take on it. Yeah. And some people are so affected so differently by things. In my mind, I feel like in real estate, there's always something. Mm-hmm. Right? We just got through, we just ripped off the Band-Aid on the whole NAR lawsuit and all the changes went into effect on August 17th. And that was a clusterfuck of colossal proportion. But we're still alive. Sellers are still selling, buyers are still buying. We've figured it out. It's going to be fine. And so a wonky election year, same thing. We're all going to figure it out. It's going to be fine.
It's probably not going to be our only wonky election year too. Let's be real. If you're buying a home, on all the years you're going to be in that home. But we've talked about this from the beginning on the podcast and just in general, in your business and with clients is you still have to be able to, like, your business has to be able to operate in every season of everything, right? You have to be able to operate through, like recessions, and you have to be able to operate through global pandemics, and you have to be able to operate through like a wonky election year. And like, that is just the reality if you want to have a business. And this is proof right here. Like, nothing, if we look back on, since we started working together, Beth, like if you look back on that, where's the normal? Can you tell me where the normal year was?
We haven't had any normal.
I can't find it. Yeah. So if we just think about that, and sure, it'll probably, cool off a little bit, and we'll get a little bit of normal coming up, at least I hope. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
But it's just part of business. It's part of learning to operate, because people, like you said, are always buying and selling. It's the reality.
Well, and I think I don't have the specific stats in front of me because, like I said, I thought we were recording a different podcast show than what we're actually recording. The stats are something like of the last, I think it's like the last like 6 or 8 election cycles, home values have gone up on all of them except for one they stayed flat, and then one they lowered. And that the one where values went down was 07, 08 crash stuff like that, which totally made sense. It was like the economic big crash of our lifetime. So home values are still going up. They're not skyrocketing as quickly as what they were during COVID, but we're still seeing an upward trend. Interest rates are trending down. And that's the other stat, is that interest rates generally go down in an election year, stay flat, or go down. So it's like there's wins out there. If people want to buy or sell homes, there are a lot of wins out there. And the hill I'm gonna go die on, new construction is so underappreciated right now. Builders are sitting on spec homes and inventory that they are like slashing the prices. Those investors start breathing down the builder's neck the minute they get the certificate of occupancy, and they're like, okay, great, the house is finished now, get this freaking thing sold. And so, Amy, who was on our team, she transitioned into new construction, and it's been so fun to talk to her and brainstorm and, all those things, kind of like mastermind with her about like what she's seen. And she's always sending out awesome emails. Thank you, Christy, for like really, it's awesome. Like, Amy took all those marketing skills that she learned on our team, and she's one of the only builder reps out there. If you're a builder rep and you're listening to this show, one of the things that you can really do to like build connection with real estate agents, this is a total side tangent, is to send out awesome emails.
Shouldn't everyone be sending emails at every business that exists, basically?
1,000%. But I would say a lot of builder reps don't do that. So Amy sends out these awesome emails, and she's like, hey, our special this month is blah. And if you get in now, we're doing this. And here's a home that we have. We just slashed the price. And, she puts in her quippy, funny personality to it. And I'm like, dude, you're the only builder rep in the whole Twin Cities that's doing this at this level.
Go, Amy.
I know. And then she's winning awards. So I'm like, we knew her when. It's so fun. So that was fun. A total side tangent. But yeah, I'm not looking at any doom and gloom this fall. I think there are wins out there. And I'm really a glass half full type gal in general. I think that if you are looking for a win, there's wins to be had, but I think there's nuances. There's nuances in every market across the country. I think being partnered with the incredible support people, like your title people, they're making life so wonderful for us. Having awesome lenders at our beck and call, and vendors for, can you get a house painted quick? Can we get a deck built like ASAP so we can get a property on the market? Like, all of those things are so key. And like, I'm never going to say that those are not like those make those people that kind of like surround our business, like make things so much easier for us.
Who you work with matters.
I know, it's so cliche and so cheesy, but it is so true.
Is it though?
But it's true. It's 1,000% true.
Yeah. You can't get stuck. And if you're a realtor listening to this and you're not like, you're more on the business side and not the buyer or seller listening, like, don't get stuck in that, oh my God, I have to wait. Like, oh my God, like, no, keep serving your clients, like keep moving forward. Things aren't stopping because you're panicking. And
Yeah, the NAR lawsuit, the election, interest
Yeah.
rates, the Fed, like none of
We've
that.
seen people just freaking out for this last year, just constant. And it's like, come on, not everyone, right? Those that aren't panicking are the ones that businesses are still moving forward and are still serving clients at that high level. So
It was interesting to sit at our board, our local real estate board here. Carrie and I had taken a class about all the new forms. So in Minnesota, August 1st is like the date where they change the forms every year. If they're going to make changes, that's when it happens. Well, of course, there were a lot of changes this year. And then like all the NAR conversations, the amount of, literally asinine questions. Carrie and I are looking at each other and I'm like, how quickly can we get out of this room of these, so many just like, I don't even know, like fellow professionals that I'm like, I hope to God we don't cross paths because I'm terrified of how your brain is working right now.
Just when you get into that fight flight, freaking out, right? You can't make rational decisions.
No. So there was way too much panic about that.
Everything's okay.
But we survived, right? We made it through August 17th and the transition. We're still all alive to tell the story. I think the only thing that's predictable in real estate is to know that change is inevitable. And the great agents are going to pivot and ebb and flow with the change and keep their clients calm and keep their clients educated about what's happening in the marketplace. And so like, that's just what we're always trying to do here on the Bus Bench Babes.
I love it. Well, that's a good way to wrap this up, Beth.
There you go. It's my mic drop moment.
All right. So fall real estate market prediction. I love it. Yeah. I'm excited. For the fall.
Sky is not falling.
No, it's not.
Grab a pumpkin spice latte and let's go look at some houses.
All right. So until next time, Bus Bench Babes.
Keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls. Are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.